G'day bike riders. Today I'm riding in Geelong and we're going to look at the main bike route into the CBD from the south side of town. We've looked at this before, but this time I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I'm the Bike Route Buddy, bringing you bicycle infrastructure reviews from Geelong and further afield. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button to help influence change. Here we are in Geelong, Victoria, Australia, a city of about 250,000 people. It is located about 80 kilometres to the west of Melbourne, which is Australia's biggest city when it overtook Sydney in 2023. The southern bike link follows Moorabool Street from the Barwon River to Carr Street, where it turns into a shared path and then heads along Jarringap Street. We are just looking at the Moorabool Street section, where it is a curb-separated bi-directional bike lane. It is pretty good on most sections, and it has seen an uptake of bike riders using it since it was installed in around 2017. There is a bike counter on this section, but I haven't had any success in getting hold of the data, and none of the counts have been published at the time of making this video. Moorabool Street is a 60 km/h street from the Barwon River to McKillop Street, although we'll only be looking at the section from the Barwon River to where the southern bike link turns off along Carr Street. Moorabool Street has businesses on both sides of the road, and there are more businesses down the side streets. At the southern end, a petrol station, a number of tyre shops, car dealers, a pub, drive-through coffee shop, restaurants, lunch shops, and an appliance store and a hardware. Further north on one side is Cardinia Park Football Ground, the home of the Geelong Cats AFL team. There's a public swimming pool, and it's not far through to the Geelong netball courts. On the eastern side of the road are more restaurants, offices, petrol stations, a bottle shop, cinema, a big sports shop, and a number of smaller businesses. There are a lot of destinations here, so there are often many people along this section. The southern bike link runs down the western side of the road. These bike riders and people accessing the sporting facilities and businesses create a lot of people in the area not in cars. Is 60 km/h an appropriate speed limit for this road? At the southern end from the Barwon River to Fine Street, it is 310 metres, and a further 380 metres to the next crossing to the south, where there isn't even a signal crossing to get across the road. You have to make 3 crossings if you just want to get across the road, and it takes over 4 minutes. There isn't a safe crossing for 690 metres through here. If you are riding the protected bike lanes in the vicinity of the river and you want to get to the destinations on the eastern side of the road, you have to cross 4 lanes of traffic moving at 60 km/h or make the 300 metre journey up to the lights and 300 metres journey back again. You can also go under the bridge, but that's a 660 metre detour just to get across the road. It is much the same if you were walking, but to go to the lights is probably a bit too far, and many people will run the gauntlet across the street, or just simply not cross the street and get back in their car and drive elsewhere. The intersection with Fine Street is a big one, with 2 straight ahead traffic lanes and turning lanes in each direction, making the crossing in any direction a 6-lane crossing. There are traffic lights for all turns, so a full wait outside of peak time can be up to 1 minute, and in peak times a minute 30 for people driving cars travelling north or south on Moorabool Street. Once across Fine Street, it's a 500 metre section without any regulated crossing points until the lights at Lonsdale Street. If you want to cross to any of the businesses or the residential streets to the east, you either have to cross at one of the lights or try your luck crossing the traffic. There are a couple of refuge points along the way, but it doesn't feel that great waiting in them with cars whizzing by on both sides, and they barely fit a bike, let alone a family with bikes. So the question is, what difference would it make to drivers, pedestrians and bike riders if the speed limit was lowered to 50, 40 or 30 km/h? Let's start by looking at pedestrians and bike riders. Research from the Curtin Monash Accident Research Centre found the risk of fatal injury for a pedestrian or cyclist when struck by a moving vehicle falls very rapidly from around 100% at 60 km/h to around 80% at 50, 25% at 40 and about 5% at 30 km/h. It doesn't take much research on the internet to find a lot of studies showing similar results. This can be found on the roadsafety.gov.au website. The speed a vehicle is travelling at is a major factor in the seriousness of a crash involving pedestrians and cyclists. It is estimated there is a 10% probability of being killed if struck at 30 km/h, but this rises to over 90% at 50 km/h. And this one from brake.org.uk. The greater the impact speed, the greater the chance of death. A pedestrian hit at 30 mph has a very significant 1 in 5 chance of being killed. This rises significantly to 1 in 3 chance if they hit at 35 mph. Even small increases in speed can lead to an increase in impact severity. And this one from Traffic Desk, where at 30 kilometres per hour, a pedestrian has a 90% chance of survival, and at 60 kilometres per hour, only a 10% chance of survival, based on young adult pedestrians. So the chance of survival would be much lower for children or the elderly. I could go on with more research and data, but you get the message. The studies all come up with similar results, in that there is a high chance of death to a pedestrian or cyclist if hit by a car travelling at 60 kilometres per hour, and the chance of death reduces quickly, even with very small reductions in speed. So it's pretty obvious that lower speeds dramatically improve a person's chance of survival if hit by a car. Let's face it, people make mistakes, both drivers, pedestrians and bike riders. Should the punishment for making a mistake be death or causing someone's death? There are shops and businesses along this street, so we expect there to be people around going to these shops, and they probably want to access the services on both sides of the street. Another thing to point out is the continued uptake of heavier and higher vehicles. A study by Justin Tyndall in Science Direct from the USA found that the death rate when the striking vehicle is a pickup or full-sized SUV is more than 30% higher. In terms of weight, if you double the weight of a vehicle, you double the kinetic energy, so the impact with a bike rider or pedestrian will be much more severe. Tyndall also found that a 4-inch or 100mm increase in the front end height translates to a 28% increase in pedestrian death. Lower fronted and slope fronted vehicles tend to bring the impact onto the bonnet of the car, whereas higher fronted and vertical fronted vehicles push the pedestrian or bike rider back out in front of the vehicle. And as the vehicle cannot stop immediately, the person ends up under the car. Studies also found that, in general, vehicles taller than 35 inches were more dangerous to pedestrians than the shorter ones, mainly because they tended to cause more severe head injuries. Among vehicles taller than 35 inches, those with vertical front ends were more dangerous than those with sloped front ends. Torso and hip injuries from these types of vehicles were more frequent and severe. Unlike all other vehicle types, tall and blunt vehicles primarily inflicted torso injuries with their front ends, rather than with the tops of their hoods. They were more likely to injure pedestrians by throwing them forward, while tall and sloped vehicles usually rolled them onto the hood of the vehicle first. Pedestrians who were shorter relative to the height of the striking vehicle also suffered more severe injuries. So, if as a society we don't want to control the size and the height of the vehicles to protect bike riders and pedestrians, we may need to control speed. If you remember back to high school physics, the formula for kinetic energy is energy equals a half times the mass times the velocity squared. So if you double the speed, you increase the energy that needs to be dissipated in a collision by 4 times. Conversely, if you halve the speed, the energy will go down to a quarter. This is why reducing the speed has such a big impact on the safety of people outside of cars. What about the impact to car traffic? What would happen if the speed limit was reduced from 60 km per hour to another figure for the full length from the Barwon River to Car Street, where the southern bike link turns off? The total distance is 918 metres. If there were no traffic lights, no traffic congestion, and you could travel at 60 km per hour the whole way, it would take 55 seconds to travel this distance. By lowering the speed limit to 50, the time would be 66 seconds, and at 40 km per hour, 82 seconds, and at 30, 110 seconds. Remember, that is if there were no traffic lights and no congestion. What about if we add stopping at Fine Street? The cycle is 1 minute and 2 seconds at a minimum during the middle of the day, and it is longer during the morning and evening peaks. There are right turning arrows for all turns, so it takes some time to get your turn. There are multiple sets of lights along Moorabool Street, but if we add in the waiting time at just this one set of lights, the percentage increase in time is sharply reduced. Setting the speed limit at 50 km per hour will increase the total time from 117 seconds to 128 seconds, an increase of just 9% of the travel time, and reducing the limit to 40 km per hour result in only a 24% increase in time for this section. We know that cars don't instantly go from stopped to 60 km per hour. The time it takes to speed up hasn't been included here, so that will make the increase in time even smaller than 9% and 24% for a 50 km per hour and a 40 km per hour limit respectively. Most people's journeys are not just this section of Moorabool Street, so the 11, 28 or 55 second increase in travel time is only a small fraction of the total trip time. Reducing the speed limit along this road, and even adding in some traffic calming features along this road, won't kill a person driving a car. It will just add a handful of seconds to the journey, and a very small percentage of the journey time. Not reducing the speed limit could literally kill a person walking or riding a bike. The added benefit is that this section of road would become quieter, as reduced speed reduces noise pollution. It would be a more pleasant place as a destination for the restaurants and the businesses located along here. The bike lanes, although protected with rounded curbs from traffic, they are still close to fast-moving cars and trucks. All we have to do is take a look at the curbs to see how many tyre marks there are and the number that have broken to see how many drivers find themselves crossing the curb. I don't think the bikes have caused the damage to these curbs. If a car is going to cross into the bike lane, it would be much better for the bike rider if there is a lower chance of severe injury or death. So let's review this section of road, provide some safer opportunities for bike riders travelling along the southern bike link to access the businesses and residential areas on the eastern side of Moorabool Street. We have this great asset in the southern bike link, but it is no good in isolation if people can't get safely across the road to use it. So what's your acceptable number for this street? 50, 40, 30 kilometres per hour? 11 seconds, 28 seconds, or 55 seconds? And what is your number for the risk to pedestrian and cyclist death if hit by a car? 10%, 50%, or 90%? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to click on the subscribe button and give this video a like. I'm the Bike Route Buddy, and I'll see you riding along a street with appropriate traffic calming and speed limits.